clear discrimination in the process. The selection was not fair or balanced. This kind of favoritism is harmful to our unity and progress as a country. Even worse, the issue of gender imbalance is serious. Out of 30 students selected, only 2 were female. This shows that young women are not being given equal chance to succeed, even when they are qualified and ready. I strongly call on the ministry and all responsible leaders to take action. We need a transparent and fair system that gives equal opportunities to all, regardless of tribe or gender. Let's stand for justice, fairness, and better future for all young people in South Sudan.
Sounds of the Week on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. Live from Juba, on air and online.
This is iRadio News.
Hello, this is iRadio News. First, here are the headlines. The Central Equatorial State Government has rejected a recent move by the South Sudan Revenue Authority to divide Juba into operational zones for taxpayer registration, citing constitutional overreach and lack of consultation. Some South Sudanese scholarship students in India have criticized the 2025 selection list, citing unfair criteria and regional bias in the selection process. And the United States Supreme Court on Thursday gave a green light to Trump administration to deport a group of foreign nationals with criminal records to South Sudan, despite growing concern over their safety upon arrival. These stories and more are coming to you in this news bulletin with me, Diko. Now, here is the news in details. Central Equatorial State Government has rejected a recent move by the South Sudan Revenue Authority is divided Juba into operational zone of taxpayers registration, citing constitutional overreach and lack of consultation. On Tuesday, the South Sudan Revenue Authority say it began zoning Juba City into 10 areas for a new taxpayer registration campaigning aimed at boosting revenue collection and improvement of tax compliancy. According to Simon Akwadeng, the Commissioner General of the Revenue Authority, the exercise involved door-to-door registration of all businesses, services providers, and self-employed individuals across the capital. Akwe said the process was free of charge and no one is allowed to demand payment during the registration. He warned that anyone found impersonating South Sudan Revenue Authority officials or collecting money will be prosecuted. In a press briefing following a State Council of Ministers meeting on Thursday, Acting Minister of Information and Communication Jacob Aligo Ladu told journalists that the Council have unanimously urged the SSRA to revoke the decision. He said the Cabinet emphasized that any decision affecting the capital city should involve prior consultation between the SSRA, the state government and the Juba City Council, and he have to be saying this.
The Council also listened to a memo from the State Minister of Finance, Planning and Investment regarding the unilateral zoning of Juba City Council and Juba County by the South Sudan Revenue Authority. The Council deliberated on the memo and resolved to reject this unilateral decision and requested or urged the South Sudan Revenue Authority to revoke this decision until relevant consultation are done with the relevant levels of the government, the state, the city council, and Juba County.
Minister Ligo added that the decision of the SSRA violates the provision of Article 49 of the South Sudan Transitional Constitution 2011 as amended, which calls for respect of intergovernmental linkages.
The Council noted that such decisions violates the provisions of Article 49 of the South Sudan Transitional Constitution 2011 as amended, which calls for respect of intergovernmental linkages. So the Council strongly demands that the South Sudan Revenue Authority should also respect the constitutional rights of Central Equatorial State to collect revenue so that it can be able to implement its programs and its mandate.
Some South Sudanese scholarship students in India have criticized the 2025 selection list, citing unfair criteria and regional bias in the selection process. The Minister of Higher Education denies the allegation, saying the process was done through a committee. Their appeal came after the ministry released a list of continuing 35 students selected to travel to India as part of the Indian Council of Cultural Relationship and Scholarship Program. Rejoice Diko, a South Sudanese student leader in India, says the recent selection of scholarship reception was conducted in a manner that lacked transparency, fairness and merit-based evaluation. She said the unfair selection has severely undermined the trust of many students in public institutions and robbed those who have worked hard for such life-changing opportunities. She called on the government to conduct transparent investigation in the recent selection process. Rejoice Diko spoke to iRadio from India, and she happened to be saying this.
The recent ICCR scholarship selection done by the Ministry of Higher Education in South Sudan. There is clear discrimination in the process. The selection was not fair or balanced. This kind of favoritism is harmful to our unity and progress as a country. Even worse, the issue of gender imbalance is serious. Out of 30 students selected, only 2 were female. This shows that young women are not being given equal chance to succeed, even when they are qualified and ready. I strongly call on the ministry and all responsible leaders to take action. We need a transparent and fair system that gives equal opportunities to all, regardless of tribe or gender. Let's stand for justice, fairness, and better future for all young people in South Sudan.
In his response, the Director General of Training and External Relations, Dr. Atem Kur Jog, says this in response.
The applicants applied online to Indian scholarship, to Indian universities. Then the list is sent to the Indian embassy, and then the Indian embassy forwards this list to us. The number of applicants was 457 candidates, and only 30 students or 30 applicants are qualified to go for this scholarship. When we applied, of course, in the past it used to be divided according to the state and 3 administrative areas. But with the new policy, with the new minister, he said this foreign scholarship should be given to those qualified. So it should be based on merit of the academic performance. A committee was formed of 7 people. This committee is set to nominate or to select 30 people from the 457 applications. These 30 include PhD. So it was a joint work, not a one-person decision. Not the minister, not the undersecretary, not the director, acting director for training, but a committee authorized to do that work.
In another news, the United States Supreme Court on Thursday gave a green light to Trump administration to deport a group of foreign nationals with criminal records to South Sudan, despite growing concern over their safety upon arrival. The men, originally from Latin America and Asia, have been held for weeks at the U.S. naval base in Djibouti after being convicted of serious crimes in the United States. A previous court ruling had barred their removal without prior notice or an opportunity to raise claims of fear, torture and persecution. However, the latest decision from the top court overturned that restriction, effectively clearing the way for deportations to proceed. Reacting to the ruling, Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security Teresa Meglin said the group will be in South Sudan by Independence Day, calling the move a win for the rule of law. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi welcomed the ruling, accusing a lower court judge of overstepping his authority and praising the Department of Justice for defending a government policy. Back in May, District Judge Brian Murphy had blocked the Trump administration from sending the men to South Sudan without giving them time to speak to the U.S. asylum officers. He urged the administration had violated earlier court orders by turning to carry out the deportation within the 24 hours and without fair procedure, despite warning from the U.S. State Department against the travel to South Sudan due to the ongoing Due to the ongoing violence and political instability, Washington said it has received credible diplomatic assurance from Juba that the deportees will not be tortured. The move has drawn criticism in the U.S. as Justice Sonia, in a dissenting opinion joined by Justice Kevin Brown, said the majority of the Supreme Court was enabling what she said unlawful ends by allowing the removals without adequate safeguards. She warned the deportees risk facing torture or even death in South Sudan. Justice Ellen, while expressing concerns about the case, said law court cannot enforce orders that the Supreme Court has already put on hold. In another news, as South Sudan preps to mark 14 years of independence, permanent SPLM leader Rebecca Joshua Okoch has shared her personal sacrifice during the Liberation War. Speaking ahead of the July 9th Independence Day in an exclusive interview on iRadio on Thursday, Ms. Okoch says she had married when she joined the Liberation War after having graduated a few years earlier. Ms. Okoch, former Minister of Telecommunication and Postal Services and Minister of Road and Bridges, reflected on her time in the bush as a period of struggle and sacrifice. Despite the hardships, she said she's proud to have contributed to the liberation of South Sudan. She was speaking on our radio Sundown show yesterday, and she had to say this.
I was only 27 years old. So being young is not for fun, but it's for taking action. And that is how I joined the liberation. It was a sacrifice. Sacrifice of everything, your youth. As a young person, I would have been prestigious and happy to walk around like any other young graduate. And imagine then, university graduate girls by then. It was a story, it was something big. But I decided to join the liberation. In the liberation, you are not going to stay there as a family. And I also remind always, well, I'm known in the liberation as Arus at Tahrir. Because I went as Arus, I still had even henna in my hands. But you see that amount of sacrifice. I did not have in mind that when I joined the liberation, I'm going to stick together with my family. No, all of us were separate. Everybody was in their own assignment and were given our all separate assignments. So it was not easy, even emotionally, it was not easy. This is for a young family. So it was a complete kind of difficult time, but the most important bit is how we were sticking to the liberation. So experiences were many, and sometimes also even health. There are women who never got, health services. Some would die of childbirth. 1988 was a time of famine, and it was even known much more for Barghazal area. You can't imagine, the effect of it on our people and on our country. So it was not an easy journey, but we always say it was worth having that journey. And some of us who have gone through that, I personally feel so proud and so happy with myself, but I give thanks to God and say, I'm happy that I experienced the revolution. And I'm happy that we have been part of the independence of our country.
South Sudan will celebrate her 14th anniversary of independence this very Wednesday, July 9th next week. The independence declared on July 9th, 2011 followed a 21-year liberation war between the Sudan People Liberation Movement, SPLM. In another news as well, which is the last, a group of 20 volunteers lawyers has formed a legal alliance to pursue justice of slain Garang Samandiu, a hotel worker who was fatally shot by the police officer at checkpoint in Juba over the weekend. Garang, who was returning from work at around 11 p.m. on Saturday, was reportedly riding a motorbike when he was stopped at the security checkpoint. According to the witness and colleagues, the lad was unarmed and posed no threat. He was shot in the head, suggesting he was stationary and non-aggressive at the time. While the exact details remain unclear, the police have since arrested the officer accused of the shooting, confirming their action earlier this week. On the lead volunteer lawyers, Peter Keir, told iRadio that Alliance of Illegal Professionals was formed out of a shock and outrage over the incident. Speaking to iRadio, he said the initiative to support the deceased family in court and ensure the legal procedure runs to the full course without external interference.
الفكرة جاء طبعا بمجرد ما الناس سمعت الخبر بتاع الضرب للزميل. الناس انصدموا شديد، وسبب الانصدام نابع من انه يا اخي الاجهزه الامنيه اللي بتمثل في الشرطه وغيره، ده الاجهزه المفروض يعملوا حمايه للمواطن، ما المفروض تكون هي الجهة اللي بتستهدف الناس. وبعدين هو كان أعزل، يعني ما شاء أي حاجة ولا يتصرف تصرف ممكن نقول يمكن يعني أدى للعملية. واللي بيأكد الكلام ده هو انضرب في راسه، يعني في نص راسه، وده اللي بيوري إنه هو ضربه وهو كان واقف. العدد هسه ماشي في تزايد، يعني حتى الآن في 20 مهامي. هو الدور الأساسي بتاعنا إنه الإجراءات تمشي حسب القانون تأخذ مجراه بدون ما يكون في أي تأثير جاي هنا ولا هناك. ده الهدف الأساسي بتاعنا كمهامين، القانون تأخذ مجرى بتاعه بشكل سليم.
Civil society leaders continue to call for accountability and institutional reform, stressing the protection of civilians must remain the concern of the law enforcement operation. Reacting to the incident earlier on, Edmund Yakane, Executive Director of Community Empowerment for Progress Organization, demanded that the Inspector General of Police and top security officials, including the heads of the National Security, Military Intelligence and the Criminal Investigation Department, take immediate action against security personnel who misuse their powers. Yakani decried what he described as a systematic harassment and intimidation by junior officers who allegedly exploit their position to pursue personal vantage. He called on the national leadership and judiciary to ensure no compromise is made delivering justice to a Garang family. And with that being, we are going to be listening to my colleague that is with international news, and that will be none other than Newmont Pod.
Turning to international news, Mali's military leader General Assimi Goïta has been granted a 5-year presidential term by the transitional parliament, which is renewable without elections. The junta leader, who has seized power twice, had promised the return of democracy last year, but it never materialized. The bill granting his new mandate said the transition will last as many times as necessary and until Mali was pacified. It clears General Goïta to lead the West African country until at least 2030, with many fearing the move could lead to the repression of the opposition or dissenting opinions. Elsewhere, a former security contractor for Gaza's controversial new Israel and US-backed aid distribution site has told the BBC that he witnessed colleagues opening fire several times on angry Palestinians who had posed no threat, including with machine guns. On one occasion, he said a guard had opened fire from a watchtower with a machine gun because a group of women, children and elderly people was moving too slowly away from the site. When asked to respond, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation said the allegations were categorically false. Finally, a state-of-the-art British fighter jet stuck at an airport in India for nearly 3 weeks now has sparked curiosity and raised questions about how such a modern aircraft could get stranded for days in a foreign country. The Flight 35B landed at Thiruvananthapuram Airport in the southern state of Kerala on 14 June. The aircraft was diverted there after it ran into bad weather during a sortie in the Indian Ocean and was unable to return to HMS Prince of Wales, the Royal Navy's flag carrier.
Thank you so much, Nimot. Up next at the Sport News with my colleague Memo.
Thanks, Diko D. Andrew. In the world of sports, Peter Rufai has been hailed as a giant of football after the former Nigerian goalkeeper died aged 61 on Thursday following a prolonged illness. Affectionately known as Dodo Mayana, he helped the Super Eagles win the Africa Cup of Nations in 1994 and also represented his nation at the FIFA World Cup in 1994 and 1998. Born in Lagos, Rufai enjoyed a stellar international career, earning 65 caps between 1983 and 1998. His safe hands, commanding presence and calm demeanor made him a standout performer for Nigeria's golden generation of the 1990s. In boxing, Eddie Hearn says he has received no request from Chris Eubank Jr.'s team to renegotiate the weight terms of the September's rematch with Conor Bent, adding he would be reluctant to entertain one if it came. The matchroom promoter confirmed the rematch will be fought under the exact same conditions as their April bout at the middleweight limit of 160 IB with a rehydration clause as stipulated in a two-fight contract agreed beforehand. Eubank outpointed Bent at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in their much-hyped grudge match, the latest chapter, a rivalry dating back to when their legendary fathers first fought. In tennis, defending champion Barbora Krejcikova continued her title defense with victory in round 2 as the top seeds backed the trend of early exits to advance on day 4 at Wimbledon. Czech player Krejcikova secured a 4-6, 4-6, 6-2 win over American Caroline Dolehide, while there were also wins for 7 seed Mira Andreeva, 8 seed Iga Swiatek, 10 seed Emma Navarro, and 11 seed Elena Rybakina. It comes after 16 seeded players tumbled out of the women's singles draw in the opening 3 days, with 9 top 10 seeds across the men's and women's singles draws out. That's all in the world of sports. Back to you, Diko Diendro.
Thank you so much, Lesubo Memo, and that had been all in the international news and local news. But first, importantly, here was the headlines. The Central Equatorial State Government has rejected a recent move by the South Sudan Revenue Authority to divide Juba into operational zones for taxpayers' registration, citing constitutional outreach and as well lack of consultation. Some of South Sudanese scholarship students in India have criticized the 2025 selection list, citing unfair criteria and regional bias in the selection process. And the United States Supreme Court on Thursday gave a green light to a Trump administration to deport a group of foreign nationals with criminal records to South Sudan, despite growing concern over their safety upon arrival. That's the end of iReady News. If there is any story or event you would like iReady to cover or report about, please send us a text message on 0925 287870. It's also our WhatsApp number. Follow us on X at iRadio Juba, like our Facebook page iRadio, subscribe to our YouTube channel at iRadio South Sudan, or follow us on our TikTok page South Sudan iRadio. You can also visit our website and listen to us online at www.iradio.org. Stay tuned for news in Arabic at 1:30. I'm Diko Andrew. Thank you for listening.